Welcome to prime time, bitch. Hi YouTube, it's me. And it's time for me to do my next review on the next installment in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And it's time for me to review this one here. If you can't see, it says A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Okay, so just as a heads up, there are no spoilers in this review until the end, and I'll warn you before they're coming, so right now you don't need to worry about spoilers. Okay, so what did I think about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3? I loved it, guys. I really loved it. It's almost as good as the original. Not quite, but it's just a little bit below the original, and I thought it was a little bit better than the second one. Okay, so I'm gonna go into some stuff that I really liked about the movie. Okay, number one, some old characters come back. Like in A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, it was a bit disappointing how Nancy and none of the other surviving characters from the first Nightmare on Elm Street came back, with the exception of Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, of course. But in Part 3, you see the return of Nancy Thompson, played by the same girl, Heather. I forgot her last name, sorry. And her dad is in this movie as well. So it's good to see that those two people come back. And another thing I really liked about the film is the plot. Now, the plot of Part 3 is a lot more complicated than Part 1 or 2. Like, I'll say what it's basically about without going into depth. It's basically about this hospital that deals with kids with sleeping disorders, and it deals with a bunch of teenagers who have all one sleeping disorder. They all have nightmares about Freddy Krueger, and the plot just builds off from there. Like, all of the different kids have their own individual problems. There's one kid who can't walk, there's one kid who can't talk, there's one girl who's a drug addict, and there's another who's just completely obsessed with his TV. And so all these kids have their own problems. And then Nancy is one of the workers, and she knows that Freddy Krueger's evil spirit is not completely destroyed because of the ending of the first one, and she finds out that Freddy has now targeted these new kids. So it's just about her helping these new kids, and it has a lot of interesting subplots along the way. Like, you meet the character Amanda Krueger. I'm not going to go into too much detail about her, but it's Freddy's mother, and you get to meet Freddy's mum in this movie. And you meet this new guy who's one of Nancy's closest friends. I forgot his name, but that was interesting. So it has a very good plot. Also, there are some phenomenal killing scenes in this movie. I'm not going to say who the characters are, but you've got the let's get high scene. You've got the scene where that guy thinks he's a wizard. I really like that bit. And you've got that scene with the the pincers where the guy's muscles goes up and out, and Freddy's using him like a puppet. And my absolute favourite killing scene in the whole movie is the scene involving the TV. Now, if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I've talked about, but if you haven't, then they're just some good scenes to look forward to. The acting in the movie is great. Of course, there's the legendary Robert Englund, who did a good job, and Heather did a great job as well, and the main introduced character did a good job as well. Her name was Christian. She was basically, out of all the kids, she was probably the main characters. The main character out of the kids. So she was great. The music is also good. So yeah, my one and only problem with Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, and this is really the only reason why it's a little bit below the first movie, is because I felt in Part 3 that Freddy talked way too much in this movie. Like, in the first two movies, he barely ever spoke, or if he did, it'd be really short sentences. He wouldn't make any replies. But in this Part 3, he was having full-on conversations with people, and I just found him a lot scarier when he didn't talk as much. So that was a bit disappointing, but oh well. So now I'm going to talk about some spoilers. So if you have not seen Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, please do not watch the rest of this review. I don't want it ruined for you. So yeah. Okay, so in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, you learn some backstory of Freddy Krueger. You meet his mum, Amanda Krueger, who was that nun. She was locked in a room with 100 maniacs. She was raped constantly, and that's how Freddy was born. And you learn that about halfway through the movie, and I thought that was a really interesting way how it expands on the backstory of Freddy. So I like that. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is how I felt about Nancy and the dad getting killed off. Now, I was a little bit disappointed to see them go, but it was good just to see them again one last time. I'm not sure if it was their choice that this was the last one they wanted to do, because if so, there's not really much they can do about that, but I would have liked to see them together in maybe just one more movie, would have done the job, but oh well. So that pretty much wraps up my review of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. So definitely check it out if you have not yet. So yeah. Oh, and expect a review of Part 4, The Dream Masters, next week. But until then, let's get high.